huge thank you to CIBC for making We Get It possible.
All right, folks, welcome to the 12th episode of season 3 of We Get It with your host, Alex Mandarino. We are nearing the end of this season, believe it or not. It has been a wonderful few months, and no better person than, at least from the brief conversation we've had, would be better to kind of close things off than someone here, Marla Brennan, who is someone, interestingly enough, a guest that I've only met a couple months ago through an Instagram DM, but since the time that we've been chatting, she sent me a lot of interesting pieces on her project that we're going to get a lot of conversation going into in the next 30 to 40 minutes or so. But seems like she's got a bright light, a lot of energy, and a lot of the performing arts side of things that I can relate to going to like a drama high school and getting involved in growing up myself. So I think there's a lot in common, a lot that we can talk about. So Marla, first and foremost, thank you for joining me. Welcome to the We Get It show, and super excited to kind of get into things here.
Thank you, Alex.
You're very welcome. So we're actually going to kick things off with the question I ask all of my guests, just to kind of get a well-rounded understanding of who we're speaking with. And Marla, what are 3 words you would use to describe yourself?
I would say that I am creative, and I'm also very nurturing as well.
Yeah.
And I think I'm playful. I love to play.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Those are really descriptive words. I like that.
I'm also very descriptive, I've been told.
Perfect. Oh, we snuck a 4th one in there. I love that.
Yeah.
Very cool. And so for those who do not know you, Marla, and quite frankly, myself, we've kind of conversed a few times, I don't know much about your story either. Can you tell us a little bit about your cancer story from diagnosis to sort of where you are at right now?
Yes, definitely. So I was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer in July 2020. It was actually my 35th birthday when I woke up in the hospital. I had a surgery to have my left ovary removed because I had a tumor that I didn't know I had that ruptured in my pelvis, which was a nightmare, as I'm sure anyone could imagine. And I don't want you to imagine it too much, actually. I knew there was something wrong. And, I had menstrual problems for many, many years. And, this was something I was investigating regularly. And I went to my doctor in 2019 when I'd had an ovarian cyst rupture. And I was told it's very common. It's nothing to worry about. It just happens. And then a few months after that, I begged for a CT scan because I was in so much pain. And I was told, you're not sick enough to have a CT scan. The government won't cover it. So 4 more months went by. I begged again, listed all the symptoms for ovarian cancer, and then was told it sounds like muscle pain and things that commonly happen to women. So, and then I had a rupture of a tumor and it was stage 3 cancer. So, it was very devastating. I was also very angry because I felt that I tried to get help and my symptoms were dismissed as being common for women. So after I was diagnosed, I had to have a total hysterectomy, which I got through being advised by 5 different doctors because I'm sort of more of a holistic person. And I thought this couldn't really be the case. But 3 alternative doctors and 2 oncologists all agreed that a total hysterectomy was necessary. It was carcinosarcoma, which is highly aggressive, and it was already metastasized to my liver and my lung. So 6 rounds of chemotherapy were recommended. I did all of that, and I will say I tolerated the chemotherapy very, very well. It was very unusual. I had a very different idea about what chemotherapy would be. And so I went through all of that, obviously the baldness, the menopause, the hot flashes. Subsequently, it ended my relationship at the time because I lost my fertility, and that was really important to him. So I was in a real mess. Let me tell you, it was a mess. And I found different ways of coping by enjoying myself. And I got over the chemotherapy, and I restored myself with a lot of alternative practices, mainly acupuncture and Chinese medicine really helped me restore my systems. And I finished treatment in January 2021. So it's been about a year and a half since I finished chemotherapy, and I generally feel quite well. And I must admit, for any women out there who are listening, I thoroughly enjoy life without a womb. It's a whole new world. So I'm kind of like pro hysterectomy, which I would never have been before this.
Okay.
So that's some of my cancer story.
Totally. There's a lot going on there. And I mean, it's great that you obviously came out with sort of that positive take on where you're at right now. And you know, all of the things that you had mentioned, especially during 2020, out of all years, you know, everyone is aware of how the past 2 years have gone, for people in general. And, you know, a lot of people who have gone through cancer either before or maybe now have obviously gone through their own struggles and situations, but navigating all that through 2020 of all years is tough. So how did you find you navigated your cancer journey while also dealing with like a pandemic around you? How was that for you?
Um, in some ways, it helped me a little bit, because the way that it helped me, first I'll start with that actually,
Sure.
was that I would think, I'm a person who has FOMO. If everyone is out having fun and I'm not there, I'm like, come on, I got to be there. So the fact that everybody else was doing absolutely nothing really helped me, because I thought this is a
Okay.
perfect time to be bald. This is a perfect time to feel like crap and sit at home and watch Netflix all the time, because that's what everybody is doing. So in that way, it had a good effect on me.
Mhm.
Because once everybody started going back out again, I was actually like there on the same page as everybody else. So that was a plus. The ways that it was very difficult was that when I had the medical emergency of the rupture of the tumor, I was in Los
Mhm.
Angeles, because I was living there. And so I went into the hospital through the emergency room, and I spent 10 days there. It was in May of 2020, so the pandemic was really new then. So that was very difficult, to have that big unknown of, we don't know what this virus is, and then to be really cut off from everybody while also being 2,000 miles or kilometers, from my home. And then I did get out of the hospital, and I managed to pack my apartment and fly home to Canada. So that was also obviously very difficult during the pandemic. And then the waiting, because you know how all people's surgeries and everything got so backed up.
Of course.
So like I had this rupture of the tumor, and I didn't have a surgery until 2 months later
Mhm.
because of the backlog and because of the time to quarantine. Because at that time, you had to do the 2 weeks when you got back to the country.
Yep.
So there were delays, and like I was in so much pain then. I could hardly walk, I could hardly lift my own legs, I couldn't eat, I could hardly breathe. So it was, what I like to describe for myself as warrior training. It was, I just had to face some of the most horrific pain of my life. So those are some ways that the pandemic really affected me. And one more little positive thing about that, because everybody was in the sort of the mentality of, if you can't get your own groceries, we'll help you get your groceries kind of thing. That
Right.
really worked to my advantage, because I would just sit in bed and text people and be like, listen, like I need some gluten-free bread right now with some almond milk or whatever. So because that was set up, it was easier for me to get people to help me, honestly.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, even on top of that, being immunocompromised and having to go through a pandemic is even, you know, more like it's more aggressive. You have to be a little bit more careful. So you can use that in some ways to your advantage. But I'm glad you kind of made it a bit of a positive sandwich there. Some positivity to the pandemic, maybe how it was difficult, and a little bit of positivity at the end. I think we can all take some stuff away from that. But
Yeah.
no, very interesting to hear kind of how that affected you. And I mean, transitioning to kind of a lot of what the topic of conversation today might be like is, before we really get to the current project you're working on, which is super intriguing to say the least, you're definitely not someone who's new to the performing arts by any stretch of the imagination. So tell us a little bit about your involvement as kind of an artistic performer for, say, the past 15 years or so.
Yeah. So I studied acting in university. Before that, I had no interest in acting or performing. It wasn't on my radar. I was in a play in high school, and it turned out I was very good at acting. So then I auditioned to a program which was very competitive, and I got in. It was a conservatory program at Ryerson University. This was many years ago. The like 2003 was when I went to university. So I went into acting having absolutely no idea about it. I didn't want to be an actor for a ridiculous reason, which was that I didn't like hairspray and makeup. And I thought it's not going to work for me. But turns out there's a lot more to it than just hairspray and makeup. So going through acting school, like really cracked me open. The whole time I was there, I was never thinking I'm going to be a performer. I was thinking this is therapy. Like I needed to get more into my body and more into understanding how do I feel? What can my emotions be telling me? And how can I use them to activate or affect other people? So then when I graduated, I became a juggler because I had juggled since I was a child because I saw a juggler once, and my sister said, you could juggle. And then she got me some juggling balls and I became a juggler. It was very easy to get a job as a juggler because there are not so many of them.
No.
So yeah, so that kind of got me performing really regularly after I graduated. And I also speak French. So that was a really big asset. And then I had a great love for physical theater and mask work because I love physical theater and character embodiment. So I got an incredible job as a mask performer, and I toured all over Canada doing a one-person show in hundreds and hundreds of communities. A lot of them were First Nations, Indigenous communities, and remote places. So that helped me develop my chops, as they say. I did thousands of performances, really. And then, you know, I always had a love and a passion for spoken word poetry, songwriting. And so I was always writing my own songs. You know, it's a very Canadian thing, you know, the campfire. And then I continued to get other acting jobs here and there, and just kept going. And then eventually I ended up in Los Angeles, more for social reasons, because I met wonderful people there. And then I started performing in Los Angeles. I got my visa, and I was doing an act called The Juggling Chef, where I play a ridiculous character. I love wearing a fake mustache, and I juggle all types of food. So a lot of my work has been in the realm of entertainment for young audiences, usually with an educational theme and along the lines of comedy. So that I think gives you a sense of me as a performer.
100%. Very unconventional, but I think that there's a lot there that you can kind of piece away. And I mean, just in totally unrelated to cancer, but just the fact of the performing arts. I mean, to be more unique, obviously, like you said, it gives you an advantage. There's not a lot of jugglers. Having the ability to speak French and coming about it in ways that people don't really think is traditional is probably a big advantage on your side. So thank you for sharing all that. That is actually really, really cool. And so being that more unconventional side and kind of getting into through university in terms of the acting and the performing arts, my curiosity with people who get involved in that sort of thing is kind of how that starts. For myself, I mean, by no stretch am I an actor, but I went to high school for a drama program, and growing up watching someone like Jim Carrey as an actor, I guess a comedian more than anything as an actor, his facial expressions, the way that he portrayed his comedic performance, and me having a lot of energy as, you know, an early, like a preteen, that really drew me towards that acting side of things. Is there one person or one like act or something that kind of drew you into that to audition for that Ryerson program, or was it more just an innate something that just came about?
I was very inspired as a child by the imagination, mostly through books and stories. My mother was a teacher librarian, and so she spent a lot of time taking me to see authors like Robert Munsch. You know, I loved Robert Munsch, or Phoebe Gilman, who wrote Something from Nothing. And I would go and meet them, and that helped me understand that people who write books or make movies or sing are real people who go to the grocery store and drive a car. Because I think when I was a child, I just thought like they were different from me somehow. And then it did kind of slowly dawn on me, like I could be an artist. So that, you know, my early childhood, I think actually really set me up. I was a huge fan of Mr. Dressup and Fred Penner. who are Canadian icons, obviously.
Yeah.
And so that really laid the foundation for me of creativity and enjoying yourself. And then when I was about 18, I was really reluctant to audition for this acting program, but my mother was pretty insistent that I do it. Not that she was a stage mom by any means, but she gave me this quote, which was from Agnes de Mille, who is a famous dancer. And the quote is, to perform is to be outside of yourself, larger and more beautiful. That is power. It's glory on earth, and it's yours nightly. And she just wrote this quote for me and put it in this little chest of drawers that I had. And she didn't even say much about it. It was just, that really struck me. I liked the idea of being outside of myself because I have found it to be very limiting to, well, frankly, to be a human being. I know that might sound crazy, but it's like, and now these conversations are more normal as we get into more like gender fluidity and how do you identify? It's like, I find it kind of exhausting to identify as like one thing, especially if we think of like cosmic energy or life force. It's like, that's a lot. So I really liked being able to put Marla down and play a different character. That would feel to me healthy, actually. I would feel unwell if I was just the same person every day. So that's kind of a little bit of an answer to that.
100%. No, definitely an answer. It's funny because it's been a while since I've done anything in the artistic realm by any means, but I feel more comfortable than ever on stage rather than being anywhere else. And I don't know what that is. Maybe it's the power of using creativity or the performance, and knowing that people are watching might scare a lot of people with the public speaking aspect. But there's a lot of times the most comfortable I feel is in front of an audience, and performing something outside of myself, like you had kind of alluded to there. So it's funny that kind of concept comes about. So that's really cool to hear. Absolutely.
Well, I actually just want to say one more quick thing to that.
Totally, go for it.
There's this thing that's called it's like called doctor stage, I'm pretty sure is what they call it, right? So you feel really unwell. This used to happen to me regularly when I would perform. I'd feel really unwell or exhausted. And then I'd go on stage and I would not have a single problem. Like I would feel, like all of that would immediately turn off. And then the show would be over, and then I'd go back to, I don't know, being depressed or exhausted or having really bad cramps, for example. So it was like literally, I think that's why some people who are into it feel so good. It is almost like a treatment or something like that, where it's like, oh, I need to go and get my dose of performing. So it sounds like you're in the same boat, actually.
I would probably say that it's therapeutic, and you leave it all out there. So you come back, you're a different person, but when you're out there, you're a totally different person. So that's a cool concept. I haven't heard of that before, but that makes a lot of sense. So before we get into Imagination Meets Cancer, I'm more so really interested in the thought process behind whenever someone wants to curate a project, like what is the reason? A lot of people are like, you decide something, but where did that come from? So what was the initial interaction or spark that led you to this idea of curating your own artistic project involving, your life with the arts, and then I guess introducing cancer into the mix as well? Like what was kind of your first thought of, I'm going to do this?
It was seeing the performance of a comedian whose name is Karen Mills, and she does a lot of different types of comedy, but she's also an ovarian cancer survivor. And so when I saw her show, which was like a 10-minute set through a cancer benefit, I was pretty unwell at that point, physically, but also mentally. I was not in a positive mindset at all. I was a little bit more on the lines of, okay, I think I'll just die, to be blunt about it. I was also, because of the pandemic, was separated from my partner at the time because he lived in the States and no one could enter. And I was bald. So I was in a rough spot. And then I saw her performance and I just laughed so much about menopause and how horrific it is, especially like as a young woman. It's just, it's a real drag. So to laugh about that, I just immediately felt good. And so then I had the experience of feeling good, which I hadn't in a while. And so that, is a spark in itself. You get like a little bit of feeling good and you can really build on that. And then I just sat back and thought, wait a second, like I'm a performer. I could probably totally get up and make sense of this horrific thing of cancer in a creative way. So then I just, kept mulling that over in my mind. That was right at the beginning of the chemotherapy. I have like I guess you could call it like a positivity practice or like a reframe practice. I realize what's happening to me, but then I'll say it to myself 4 different ways, like, oh, you're doing chemotherapy. These drugs can be really toxic. Well, that's a reality. Or I'm doing chemotherapy and there's fairies in these drugs and they're going to activate my magical qualities. Or I'm doing this so that I can walk down this path and clear it more for other people who might be coming behind me. Or I'm on this journey because there's someone I really need to meet who's going to help me. And the only way to meet them is by walking down this path. So that was the spark. And then I said before, I like to nurture things. Like I really do like to nurture ideas. And I do that by thinking, oh, it could be this, it could be that, it could be this, to try not to be attached to this is how it is. It's like that just doesn't work for me. It's not very exciting. So
yeah. And that's where imagination obviously takes flight. So, which is obviously one of the words in the project. And so with that being said, tell us what Imagination Meets Cancer is all about.
Yes, thank you for asking. So essentially, Imagination Meets Cancer is about illuminating the healing power of the imagination. Imagination can get a bit of a bad rap. We hear like, oh, it's just in your imagination, or you need to be more realistic about these things. And like, that's very true. But I think we, as a society, are overlooking the real power of the imagination, which is to bring into being something that does not yet exist, and to truly bring it into being by being it, not just talking about it. Certainly, we could have a TED talk on imagination, and there are lots. I've watched them. But what I want to do with Imagination Meets Cancer is to really show the imagination, how it helped me in my recovery. And I do that by playing a number of different characters that I became during my treatment in my recovery. And also I want to use the imagination by using artistry to tell the story. So I tell this story about how these different characters came to me and I embodied them. And I tell it through rhyme, actually. So the show, which right now as it is about an hour presentation, but the pieces can also be used as like, a 15-minute spot, a 10-minute spot, smaller pieces. Sure. A lot of it is spoken word poetry, just to make it a little bit more like, to have a little bit oomph and some rhythm. And I also knew that I needed other people's perspectives. So then I began creative research, essentially by interviewing people about their imaginations, interviewing cancer survivors or conquerors, to see like what happened with their imagination before they had cancer, while they had cancer, after. And then I lead them in a process where we discover through an imaginary process our empowered selves. And then by really establishing that, then we look at cancer in our imaginations, because I want to see like, what are other people seeing? How do people see cancer? Like if it was a character walking down the street towards you, like, what does it look like? What if it had a t-shirt on, like what does its t-shirt say? If it had a gesture, is it giving you like 2 middle fingers in the air? Is it trying to hug you? Is it trying to strangle you? So I'm conducting these interviews and then translating that information into works of art, which are in process right now. So it's like an audio mashup with music of different people saying, imagination is a runaway train that I can't seem to jump on in time. Or imagination is a secret place inside of me where only I know how to get there. So it's like I do a fill in the blank so that people can do an improvisation about what their imagination could be. And the real goal of the project really is to inspire people by being an example and showing other people who are examples of how the imagination impacts everything we do, including how we process our cancer diagnosis, how we undergo the treatment, how we tell our story to other people. And I think there's this whole other dimension to the project, which is how do healthcare providers use imagination? Where is imagination in a cancer center? Because in some cancer centers, it's really there. You know, they have like beautiful walls of works of art that people have made. And when I go to a cancer center, or if I'm in the ER, like that's what makes a difference to me. If there's like a beautiful painting, or if someone would turn off the news playing and put on some like chill music, I really want to infiltrate the hospitals and be like, guess what? Like, we're going to make this beautiful, because there's money out there to do these things. I realize, you know, funding can be short on some things, but
Yeah.
I think there's money for it, honestly. So that gives you, I hope, a sense of it. I'll go on a tangent. So rein me in, Alex.
I'd rather tangent than anything. I think that imagination that needs to spark, it needs to flow. Otherwise it gets stunted. So that was awesome. I think it gives you a good sense of what you're working on. Throughout this conversation, throughout, you know, the abstract video that you put out to kind of tease what imagination cancer is, there's so many different forms of art that is involved. What would you say is your favorite? Is it acting? Is it singing? Is it those murals and visual arts, or dancing, or juggling? Like, do you have a favorite form? Is that even fair to single out one and not leave the others in?
I think it's a very fair question. Yes. I think I love character work. I love becoming, I guess I could say, somebody else, or really like another part of myself. So character work is my favorite. But I also get a great thrill out of singing a song well, you know, which is different than, for me, because I'm probably very judgmental on myself. You know, like if I could, when I can, and when I do sing a song really well for an audience, that's really satisfying for me, because I find singing to be pretty scary.
Yeah.
Like hitting the wrong note that's embarrassing stuff, you know?
Right.
So definitely I love character work, and singing a song that is like really from the heart of something that I've written gives me a great thrill.
Interesting. That's good to know. Yeah, I mean, like, I would say mine's probably dancing, and you bring up a good point. Like, it's very obvious if you hit the wrong note singing. If you miss a dance step, I don't think anyone knows if you continue moving and you pull it off well. So that's a fair point. But I know that there's a lot involved in the project, so that's really cool to know that there's space for a lot of different forms of arts. And, you know, obviously we've talked very positively about the project thus far, and why wouldn't we? But there's obviously challenges involved in any project, whether it be with arts or whether it be in any other industry. So thus far, what have you found has been the most challenging part of putting this project together and kind of producing it?
I would say that the most challenging part is that it's about cancer. And, you know, it's like I had cancer, I lived cancer, that whole thing. And now I'm like, let's dissect cancer and figure out what to do about cancer. And then sometimes I'm like, can we not do that? Like, can you just go and be a gardener or something, you know? So for me, the challenge is that I get obsessed about creative ideas. And so then my mind is just like on overdrive of, we could do this for cancer, we could do it at this hospital, we could do this. And so that can be dangerous territory for me, actually, because how much I care and want to do something can disrupt my own well-being, which could possibly make me sick and cause a recurrence of cancer. So I'm sort of in this cycle of like, okay, can you like slow down on the cancer? So I am entering a break right now where I shift into different work for a while to just like let this breathe for a minute. So that's a challenge. It's, you know, projects have to get funded. So that's certainly a challenge. I have had some success with that so far. But I would say that, you know, producing something is an extraordinary amount of work. And then to also be the one performing it and I'm also the writer too. So all of that would, I think, could set me up really well for a major burnout. So I have to be really careful managing my time and my energy. And my biggest challenge is being realistic, because I'm so easily influenced by my imagination and creativity. So those are real challenges that I don't want to be blind to, you know. And so I have a creative team actually, and they help me stay on track and be like, are you sure you feel okay? Maybe you should take a week off.
Good.
So yeah, that's how that is.
Good. It's hard to obviously do all of it with yourself. Now, whether you start off by producing something individually, I think it comes into place where maybe I should have some people reining me in. So
Yes.
that makes a lot of sense. Now, one of the questions I actually had was along the message that you'd like the audience to take away. I think you sort of addressed that in the sense that how imagination plays such a big factor in our lives, and even just through a cancer journey, and obviously being an inspiration for those other cancer conquerors, as you call them. So I think one question I'm thinking more of, and I asked this question off the board from what I sent, but it's not too difficult to kind of imagine. I ask a lot of authors this. I've spoken to a few people who've written books, and the biggest question is like, when do you know when it's actually done? You can edit a book, you can edit something for forever before it goes out. So whether it's close to being actually fully curated and completed, or whether there's still a long place to go, Marla, like, when do you know that this project is done? Like, because it's hard to kind of put that full stop. Do you think you'll have an endpoint? Do you think it'll always be changing? Like, how do you kind of navigate when you want to say, I'm going to put this down and this is my baby now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know the answer for sure, but I think I would say that in some ways it may never be done, because it could always be done differently here and there. But I think what it would come down to for me, knowing my past experiences of creating things and then they're done, is that it just feels complete. All of a sudden, I'm not particularly if I'm not particularly interested in doing it, and it feels that it has lived and breathed enough, and or there are other people maintaining it perhaps, then, and something else incredible comes along, then I could see me saying, you know what, I'm so glad I made sense of that for myself, because I'm in a healing process. And maybe it spoke to other people, and now they also have the tools to use their imagination, because I don't just want to say, oh, use your imagination. It's like, well, what does that even mean? So I think that I'll know when I'm satisfied by, I think it actually will come from an inner knowing. I know that there will have to be some sort of external, it's shown to people, but for myself, I think that there will be an internal, like, good job, Marla, it's done. Let's go on to the next thing and go juggle some bread or a pizza again or something like that. You know?
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah.
That's good. What, I mean, you've obviously kind of gone farther with this moving forward, but, you know, has there been like one pleasant surprise so far that you maybe didn't expect? Maybe someone's answer to what cancer looks like through the imagination, or someone's story, or maybe like something that you put together. Has there been kind of a pleasant surprise that you found throughout this entire process?
I think the most pleasant surprise is how is the connections that I've made with people by doing the interviews. It's like I have really good friends now who understand more about what I understand, that being cancer and what that means now. That has been a really great surprise, actually. And you know what else has been a surprise? How enthusiastic people are about it. Like, people are like, yes, I want to answer these questions. And it has really surprised me how the interviews haven't really been like interviews. They've become more like a healing session, actually, for me and for the other person. And they will say things like, wow, I had no idea that I felt like that until you asked me. So that is surprising me and leading me along the path of, you know, it's not an interview, and maybe it's something that you should offer, you know, to more people in a different context. I think I was also surprised actually when I got the funding for the project, because it's a competitive, it was a very competitive grant, and people had said to me, oh, you know, it's very competitive, don't get your hopes up. And then I got the funding and I was like, oh, guess who got the Friday? So that was really surprising and exciting for me because, COVID and cancer really destabilized my career as a performing artist and as an independent person in general. So then to have confirmation, like your idea is valid and, you can get paid doing this was a huge surprise to me and everybody around me, I must admit.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm not surprised that that people, took those questions and ran with them and were excited to answer them. When you brought the question up about what would cancer look like if it were a person walking down the street, the gears in my head started turning. I'm like, I don't even know how I would answer that. I would need to write down some thoughts. So the fact that people are just as engaged as my opinion would be is not surprising at all. But that's great to hear. And so, do you have like maybe a dream goal for how far reaching this project will end up? For example, like a finish line of where it goes for performing for X amount of people, performing in this particular medium. Like, is there any specific end goal for you for Imagination Meets Cancer?
Yeah, I have a dream vision of what it could be. So
Okay.
Picture this, okay? So it's an immersive experience for people who have experienced cancer or have been cared, anybody who's been affected by it, right? So it's an immersive experience in that a space is curated so that you're interacting with different technologies, whether it's like a quiz of some kind or like some kind of screen on a board of being like, did you feel like this? And then you're just like picking random things, or you're doing like you're in a video booth and you're doing some kind of like imagination challenge. And I want there to be like VR, like I want to like put on goggles and have like a healing experience where I'm seeing like glowing mandalas and like beautiful music and like healing creatures like giving me a hug or something like that, like I want to create an immersive experience like that, which is sort of in progress. And then at that experience, then there is a performance of some of the material as well. So that's what I see, but then I can hear the phone ringing and it's like London, England. And they're like, Marla, please, you've got to come to London and do the show, and then like Hong Kong is like, Marla, you got to come here. So then I'm just like, guys, I'm bringing my show to all of these people, but it's not just me, it's like a whole creative team. Then for the immersive experience, it's people who are showing up to the show are actually generating material for it to be shared. So it's not just like, oh, I'm going to go and see this thing. It's like, I'm going to go and see this thing. And in the next show, my ideas are going to be in the thing because I have a voice, meaning like, I'm not talking as myself, but someone seeing it, I have a voice that needs to be heard. So I could see it being, in gigantic hospitals or medical facilities or medical conferences, so that while doctors or healthcare practitioners are talking about, oh, this new drug that does this and this and that, well, it's broken up by this like crazy light show of performance and song and juggling and insanity with like a bunch of singing, dancing cancer survivors is some of what I'm seeing.
I love that. That's super. I mean, that's far reaching as you can get. And that ties full circle what you talked about earlier about going to cancer centers and seeing murals on walls and bringing that together. So I'm sure that obviously played a big influence in where you see this going. So that's awesome. And I wish you nothing but the best of luck with that. That would be such a cool addition to any, cancer center or anything out there as well. We've talked a lot about this piece and about performing arts and things like that. We talked prior to the interview about introducing a 1-minute spoken word piece. Do you have one that you wanted to show everybody?
Yeah, sure. So I'm just gonna, I guess, spit this little verse here.
Let's do it.
I was in pain, looking for an answer. Guess what turned out? Damn, it's cancer. I should have got help, but I stalled. Had to do chemo and I end up bald. Oh, what a way to learn my lesson. I lost my womb, but I know I'm not less than a woman giving birth on planet Earth. Fertility don't determine my worth. Fertility don't determine my worth. Plus, I'm fertile in my mind. I set my goals and I set my stride. I hit that reset button in time and turn on my light and I let it shine. I turn on my light and I let it shine. Your inner words, they're full of wisdom. Turn off the news and turn on your vision. Tap into your intuition. It's your story. You choose. I change my narrative and change my mood. The whole damn planet's going through a shift. And I learned that cancer, it's a gift. I learned that cancer, it's a gift.
I love it. Amazing. I love the repetition too. It obviously leads to so much like emphasis on those points. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. That
And
is
then
super
picture
cool.
like, picture like lights and, a
Oh
beat
yeah.
and you know what I mean? It's like produce. So
Yes.
I've been in the creation phase and now I'm moving into the, this stuff has to get produced phase. So thank you,
Absolutely.
Alex.
You are very welcome. And thank you for obviously sharing a bit of that to kind of tease everyone for what to expect. I appreciate that immensely. We'll end off with a totally unrelated question, but I ask all my guests this. It's a cool question. Nobody really gets asked. Sometimes it's the toughest. Marla, what are your top 3 favorite fruits?
My top 3 favorite fruits. I got to go with the banana. You can always rely on the banana. I feel like it has that peel. It travels fairly well. Helps with smoothies.
Yes.
I like blueberries.
Okay.
I love those antioxidants. I feel like they really talk about how blueberries have a lot of antioxidants. And a fruit that is hard to come by in our Canadian climate is the mulberry.
Mm.
I had never eaten a mulberry before, and then I lived in LA, and they grow on trees, and everyone is just like, it's mulberry season, and just like these mulberries are insane. It's mulberry season right now in LA.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
not there. I'm in Oshawa, but
Yeah.
so I highly recommend the mulberry if you can get to a warmer climate.
Yeah.
Try that.
Good to know. Okay. Well, I've never heard the mulberry in that context before in the top 3. So that's something that I'm learning. I'm really intrigued by that and wish that this Toronto climate would be warm anytime soon, but I'll have to
Right?
make a trek and see what I can find. That's
Yeah.
incredible. I love it. Well, Marla, look, we got obviously into a lot of discussion, and I think a lot of people are really going to learn a lot about, first of all, the arts, but the fact that you were able to share this project and, and get the excitement going. I think a lot of people are going to pick up on it. So I appreciate you joining me and for speaking to everyone about that. And hopefully we can get a lot more people to visualize this project. So we'll share a lot of that in the show notes and the link you sent me earlier to kind of introduce the project itself. So looking forward to that. But again, thank you for joining. And obviously we'll chat soon, and I'm excited to hear where this project goes.
Thank you for all of your work, Alex, because it's very inspiring to me, and you help amplify the voices of so many people. So I'm really happy to get a chance to speak with you today. Thank you.
Absolutely. You're very welcome. So thank you everyone else for watching. Moving forward with We Get It, we'll be performing a new season sometime soon for those who have watched, and for those who are watching today, whenever you're watching this. Have a wonderful rest of your day or week, and we'll chat soon, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.